Hi there, it's Sandy, your sister and your friend. Welcome to today's video. Today I wanted to talk about how we prepare ourselves for what's coming. Now, this actual day, this is July 4th, 2026. It is the celebration of the United States 250th birthday. So it's a really important anniversary day here. And there's things happening here in the States, but there are things happening all over the world, and a lot of them feel very chaotic. There are a lot of things being disclosed that have been in hiding for a long time. So what I'm talking about today is not doing things like, putting aside food and water, although those things may be very good. What I'm talking about is how do we change our perception of a world that appears to be in chaos. It feels to me like the earth is changing energetically now. Summer solstice was about 2 weeks ago, and it kind of felt like that the earth itself moved into a different energetic corridor so that it actually is able to receive more light. And it also feels like time itself is being compressed. And that now this increased light and heat on the earth is actually revealing things that are no longer aligned for the earth. And these new truths that are being disclosed are not being hidden from view anymore. But because we are consciousness, I think we have the ability to look beyond what's being disclosed about the collapsing man-made systems and even about the people that appear to be in power. We're going to look far deeper because we know ourselves as consciousness itself. So we're going to look into ourselves and find out what are these disclosures showing us personally about the truths that are being disclosed to us. So we're asking basically, what is this disclosure showing me about myself? Is there a falsehood that I've been believing? And is 2026, it feels to me like this is the year, or like the progression of the years where I need to rise above the illusions that I've been living under. Every story about disclosure happening across the world is actually a story about self-disclosure. And it's an opportunity and a responsibility for those of us who are waking up to really get really solidly to identify ourselves as true sons of God. And now, although we all are going to have unique ways of reacting and responding to these energetic global challenges, there are probably going to be some consistent threads about what we do. There is, I believe, going to be a core sense that we all need to raise our conscious awareness to the highest level that we possibly can. And I believe we all have an innate desire to do that. And to rely on what God has said and believe God about what God has said about himself and about us, rather than believing our conditioned minds. And now this ascended consciousness is always and has always been available to us, but we ourselves have put up blocks that really block our ability to ascend to higher levels of consciousness. Now, and that's really because we came into this world through a veil of forgetfulness. But now that we're waking up and that we've realized that we're living in some kind of a matrix, some kind of an illusory world, a world that is not eternal, we have a chance to see the story that's actually unfolding in front of us. And we just know that our higher self wants to see the story, but not to engage in the story. Because once we start fighting the story, we've actually gotten involved in it. We've put ourselves in the story. And that is not the way that we're going to rise above chaos. And we're here to do that very thing. So I do think that raising our own conscious awareness is the best way that we can help the whole world and help to dissolve the narrative that's going on around us. Because this story that we're living in is just our collective thoughts from our collective ego. So if we think higher thoughts, we can change the energy that made this world that's terrible, is built on disease and death and lack, and where everything, all these things, these terrible things seem real to us. But this is not the world that God created. God created the real world, and He's given us the ability to enter into that world even while we're living here in this world. So how do we go about increasing our awareness? And it's going to look a little different. But as we do the work to increase our ascension of ourself, the whole earth receives more love because we all share one life. There's only God's life, and that's all that there is. So as we do the work, the whole world and everybody in it benefits. So I'm going to just share 12 of my favorite practices with you. These will be very familiar to you. Maybe the way I go about doing it might be a little bit different, and it might be something of interest to you to see how I do some of these things. And the last one I'm going to share is something that's been just a new practice for me, and I really would like for you to listen for that one. And as you hear these, whatever things you do to raise your consciousness, we'd all love to hear them. So put that in the comments down below. And when you do, I'd love for you to subscribe to this channel if you haven't, and to share this if this is helpful to you. So first thing I do is I remind myself often and repeatedly that of my oneness with God. I am one with God. And sometimes I'll actually walk up to a mirror in my house, and I'll tell myself, I am one with God. I have never been and can never be separated from my Creator. Second thing, I set an intention to operate on a higher frequency. Now, setting this intention actually helps me shift from a person who could operate at lower levels of consciousness to one who has the greatest desire is to operate in this world at higher levels of consciousness. That way, when I'm slipping into something that's a lower frequency, I actually will notice it, and I can change my intention at that time. Third thing, I take an honest assessment of what I'm giving my attention to. There are a million ways to get distracted in this world, and a lot of it has to do with scrolling on my phone. I hardly ever watch the news anymore because that really brings down my level of frequency to whatever is going on here. And I recognize that my attention is the currency of this world. That's what all the powers that be or that were have been counting on, that they can capture my attention and have me go off in that direction instead of the path that I want to be on. So I set aside 30 to 60 minutes at least every day to listen to or read material that is of a higher consciousness. And that way I can dwell on those things as I go about my day, and actually operate. That will just lift my frequency just by dwelling and thinking on those things. Now, the fourth thing, I practice using only words. I practice these things. I'm not perfect at any of these, but I practice using words that align with the truth of what God says about me. Anytime I start a sentence with the two words, I am, I have just invoked God's name. And so I have to be really careful to make sure I am making statements about myself that align with what God says about me. And when I ask the question, who do you say I am? Just like Jesus asked his disciples, the only thing that God says is the only thing that's important to me. And he says that we're his children. We're lost and wandering in a confusing and a confused world, but that he has never left us and he never will leave us. So it's really God. We can choose to bring life into this world and bring heaven to earth when we stay aligned with what God has said about us. The fifth thing, I set aside 15 to 30 minutes every morning to meditate in stillness. That's how I like to start my day. And when I meditate, it's just literally a practice of just sitting still, letting any thoughts just fly by, whatever doesn't align with just stillness itself. But I can feel my body vibrating. I can also feel my everything about me just relaxing into the presence of God. And I know for the rest of the day, if I didn't start my day that way, I can feel the difference. The sixth thing I do is I pray. But when I pray, I don't beg an outside force to do something to change the world for me. I pray from the energy and the belief that I already have everything that I'm praying for. I know that God has given me everything that I need, it says, for this life and for godliness. So I don't lack anything. So I just need to pray, believing that everything I'm praying for and about is already mine. And when I pray for somebody else, I hold them also in the estimation of who God says they are, whole and healthy and complete in every way. And they may not see it yet, but as I hold that space for them, I am believing that they will see it and have the life that they want to have. Number 7, I practice gratitude and kindness because I know that there's always something to be grateful for and some way that I can speak a word of kindness to somebody else. I'm grateful that my lungs are breathing for me, that my heart is beating itself. And I know that I can actually change somebody's day when I just speak a kind word to whether it's my family member or friend or just a stranger on the street. I've heard so many people say, and I've said myself, boy, you really just made my day. And I know that just a kind word can do that. The 8th practice is I spend more time physically interacting with nature to get myself more grounded. And I particularly love hugging and touching trees because when I get into the energy of a tree, I can feel their deep rootedness, and actually I can receive their higher electromagnetic energy that they already have because of their being in a root support system with all the other trees around them. And I get the benefit of their electromagnetic energy, and I send my consciousness into them. It's a really great exchange. Number 9, I serve other people in ways where I feel that I had a particular calling from God to serve them. I volunteer at hospice where I sit with people who are in their later stages of life who don't have friends and family to be there with them. And I also plan meetings for a couple of groups of women where we have an opportunity to discuss things like we're talking about here today. And doing videos on this channel is an act of service, both to you and to me. And I realize every time I am in any kind of service opportunity that giving and receiving are the same thing. I'm always the first beneficiary of any service that I give to anybody else. The 10th thing I do is I pay attention anytime I feel like something out in the world or somebody has triggered an emotion or they've pushed one of my buttons. And it could be a family member, it could be somebody driving in the next car on the street who cut me off. It could even be the weather because it rained on my birthday and I didn't want it to. So when I notice any little twinge in my solar plexus, in my gut, that takes me off of my normal happiness, which is my normal state of affairs, I'll just hit pause and I'll ask myself, what did that comment or that situation hit? So anytime anytime something gets triggered in me, I stop, I look at it, I let whatever that old emotion that I stored, let it come up so I can name it, I forgive it, I welcome it, and it just transmutes into love. And then I thank the experience that just happened for triggering me so that I had a chance to do that work of letting something go. The 11th thing I do is I practice forgiveness, not so much as the way I was trained as in Christianity, but the way A Course in Miracles talks about forgiveness, which is I'm not forgiving anybody for the sins that they committed in this world, but I'm forgiving them for forgetting who they are. We all make mistakes, and there are consequences in this world for mistakes that we make, but none of them have eternal consequences. I try to think about Jesus on the cross when he said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." So really, this is me. That was him keeping in mind that everybody there was his brother and sister, and that's my same job too. As I forgive others, I know I'm forgiving a brother or a sister, and that's how we save everybody, and we all go back home. And the 12th thing, this is something I've recently started to do because I hadn't actually heard about it. But this is, starting to identify the times when I can feel that I'm sending some energy out into the world that is not the energy of my Christ self. So when I notice this, I ask myself, well, who is this? And my higher self, my Christ self, can easily identify who just showed up. It's either my negatively polarized shadow self, who was never allowed to be seen and always hid in the shadows, or it's my positively polarized protector self that was kind of the front man protecting the shadow. Now, I feel like as I'm realizing this and I'm seeing these two oppositely polarized selves, that I want them to be both welcome into my humanity. Because my Christ self, I feel like, is actually on a rescue mission to reclaim and love all parts of my humanness. And these parts have been living in hell. It was a self-created hell, but that's where they've been. But now my Christ self can identify them and integrate all the parts of me into a whole human. And the more I do this integration work, the higher I ascend in consciousness. And because the goal of this practice is to join the dual aspects of light and darkness of myself that is there for all of us who are living in a three-dimensional world, while we remember that we're the Christ self, where all things are already one. So we can hold this paradox because it is the means, I believe, for healing the collective consciousness. Now, these are things that I practice, and I know from looking at my own reactions and responses that they are helping me to show up as a higher conscious person here in this world. I know I can see that I'm operating at a different frequency than I was before. Now, we're all in this together, and we're learning to see through the illusions that try to claim our sovereignty. And I believe that these practices like these and others that you have been doing is a way that we're going to remember and experience God's unconditional love for us and the power of that love. We have to be vigilant as the watchman on our own wall and be aware of any false flags where some man-made system is going to offer to, quote unquote, protect us during these times of chaos. But our real safety lies in our defenselessness as the world defines it. We are safe and secure already in knowing that we are children of God Almighty, who has never and will never abandon us. And remembering this is our challenge in 2026 and beyond. God bless you. I hope this was helpful to you, and I would love to hear about what you're doing. Have a wonderful 4th of July. Bye.